It's a rarity for me to talk about music, but when I do, it's a concept album. And today is no different at all, even down to it being a pretty depressing album, just like the last time I did this. But unlike last time when I talked about The Wall, it's something that isn't as well known or as massively influential as that. This is a lot more low-key, a lot more intimate, and a lot smaller scaled. This isn't the grandiose ballad of a rock star at the end of his rope. This is the culmination of the story of a relationship that was doomed from the start. A doomed relationship built on a foundation of alcoholism, self-loathing, and mutually assured destruction. This is the story of a nameless couple that most have dubbed the alpha couple, due to many of the songs before this album that are all about them having alpha somewhere in the title. There's a long history of songs before this album came out to establish the couple and chart their dying relationship from the start, but this is the end, and that's why I'm here to talk about it. That's actually all I'm here to talk about today. I don't have any other things to talk about here, I just want to tell you a story. So join me, if you will, as we take a trip down to a broken household on Southwood Plantation Road in Tallahassee. While I am not a historian of the Mountain Goats' discography, from what I can gather, the couple met in California and eventually they got married. Years go by and their mutually assured destruction looms in the background, to the point where they know they're doomed, but in a last-ditch effort, they move down to Florida to save the unsavable. This is where the opening track, Tallahassee, starts our story. This song is here to establish the setting of our story. Window facing an ill-kept front yard. Plums on the tree, heavy with nectar. It's an allusion to their decaying marriage through literal decay, given the disrepair of the yard and the overripe plums. They live in the city of Tallahassee, Florida, and our narrator tells us half the whole town gone for the summer. Terrible silence coming down here, and you. Tallahassee is a college town with a population of at least 70,000 students, and when school ends, that's a large proportion of their population gone, leaving the few that live there year-round alone with a terrible silence. There is nothing to help distract the couple from their problems, and in doing this, they've come to the conclusion that there is no plan we can fall back on. The road this far can't be retraced. They've reached the point of no return, and it's all downhill from here. The narrator notes, there is no punchline anybody can tack on. This is a reference to a concept that dates back all the way to the origins of theater. There is comedy in tragedy, and tragedy in comedy. But as the narrator says, there isn't any comedy here anymore. It's just tragedy. And our narrator ends this track out with, "What did I come down here for? You. They may have come down here in a desperate attempt to reconcile their marriage and rekindle their love, but they're starting to lose sight of that goal, and thus it'll only get worse from here." Next up is the track First Few Desperate Hours, which tells us about the day the couple moved down to Tallahassee. It tells us about those first few desperate hours, from how bad luck came in from Tampa, bad luck comes in from Tampa, in the back of a truck, doing 90 up the interstate, and how the move causes them bad dreams the night before the truck comes in. They try to keep their spirits high, but it's all in vain. When the truck comes, the narrator says, let the good times roll on through these first few desperate hours, which is pure irony. They moved out to Tallahassee to try and save their marriage, for a fresh start, and yet they didn't start over. They went right back to square one. Their possessions get moved into the house, and there's plenty of negative imagery to keep up the tone of doom and despair. Like, and the sun peeks in like a killer through the curtain, and when clove hoof prints turn up in the garden, which are, of course, allusions to evil with serial killers and the devil. In spite of this, they try to keep their fight and good spirits, but they drop like flies, and there's a stomach-churning shift. Even in their new house, they're still drifting on towards their inevitable doom. This decaying house lies on Southwood Plantation Road, which coincidentally is the name of track 3. This is our introduction to several elements that'll be repeated many, many times as the powder keg's fuse gets shorter and shorter. The narrator talks about how their conversations with their partner are like minefields. No one's found a safe way through one yet. Then they'd go on to talk about how they spend a lot of money to buy them white gold, which is both a reference to a wedding ring and a brand of vodka. Both are correct in this case, but it's the reference to a wedding ring that matters the most in this song. The narrator later says, "I am not going to lose you, we are going to stay married," before going on to compare their house to a Louisiana graveyard and how no underground grave stays buried due to the flooding. The couple can't bury their issues because they'll always resurface, and they themselves rise like zombies to mingle with their neighbors like nothing is wrong. The song ends with the narrator going la 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 la, and at first I was always a little confused by it, because it's the only thing like it in the album, but then it clicked for me. It's a line to that cliche about someone plugging their ears and saying that when someone's telling them something they don't want to hear. It's all about denial and putting up the appearance that everything's fine, but you can only bottle up these emotions for so long. Game Shows Touch Our Lives is a quieter song about the domestic life of the couple. The opening line are, "Dug up a fifth of Hood River gin, that stuff tastes like medicine, but I'll take it, it'll do," to establish that, at the very least, our narrator depends on alcohol to get through their day, and what does their day consist of? Watching game shows and drinking in their decaying living room. And even in this pit of filth and self-loathing, the couple still has moments where they love each other, as shown in the lines, "I'm in the mood for you," even if their only source of joy comes from alcohol or television slop. Watching game shows is a very important choice, because it represents their hope that one day they'll win the grand prize and everything will work out. But alas, it isn't meant to be, because they just sit drinking and smoking on the couch all day long. The song continues to talk about the thinly veiled hope they still have that everything will work out, like how all this could be yours if the price is right, and maybe everything that falls down eventually rises, our house sinking into despair. Ah, but look at this showroom, filled with fabulous prizes. But they know that it's all in vain. It's all just a fantasy. There is no hope for them, yet they still cling on to this dying dream. The house on Southwood Plantation Road is the third person in this story. It physically represents all of the decay and despair, and the song, "The House That Dripped Blood," is all about that. It talks about how if you look beyond the broken bottles, decaying staircases, and everything else, you'll find nothing. The narrator says it's because not everyone can live like billionaires, but we all know that the narrator isn't reliable. They're ignoring the problems of the decay, but the house can't. The song personifies the house, which is why I call it the third person, all in one simple line, "The cellar door is an open throat." And it's also a subtle nod to how the house consumes anyone or anything that comes in, just like the couple and how they're dragging each other down into oblivion. Idols of the King is my least favorite track, but it has a lot of good symbolism to it that's worth talking about. The narrator compares a day full of promise and hope to clay pigeons, or rather, those days are just another target for the couple to destroy. Then it continues to talk about how the couple is surrounded by huge crows, their shared path unraveling, the narrator dreaming of vultures, cicadas, locusts, and shrieking monkeys, and how all of these creatures are all lined up. They're all symbols of doom, and it starts to weigh down on the narrator. They ask, how long will we ride this wave out? How long till someone caves under the pressure? And this sets up for the undisputable best track of the album, which happens after these realizations turn into pure, unadulterated resentment of their partner. No Children is the most well-known song on this album, and is likely the most well-known Mountain Goats song, period. This song of spite, vitriol, and hate says so much. The narrator talks about the many things they hope happens, and I'd summarize it here, but I'd rather just cite the lyrics in two chunks and talk about them after each section. I hope that our few remaining friends give up on trying to save us. I hope that we come up with a failsafe plot to piss off the dumb few that forgave us. I hope the fences we mended fall down beneath their own weight, and I hope we hang on past the last exit. I hope it's already too late. And I hope that the junkyard a few blocks from here someday burns down. And I hope the rising black smoke carries me far away and I never come back to this town again in my life. I hope I lie and tell everyone you were a good wife. And I hope you die. I hope we both die. So, the first half of the song, huh? I know I just threw a bunch of lyrics at you, so let's break them down. The narrator's resentment and hate could only be bottled up for so long, and these emotions have broken free. The narrator then begins to talk about their wish for mutually assured destruction. They tell about how they wish the people around them would just give up and leave the couple to their inevitable demise, and how the narrator wants all of the work they've done to collapse, and they hope that they hang on until their cold, bitter end. The junkyard burning down is a reference to their house, and it would be quite fitting. If the house burnt down, the narrator could use it as a chance to let the smoke carry them far away and leave their life and partner behind. With the house burning down, we could also assume that the partner, revealed here to be the wife of the narrator, would die in the fire, thus freeing the narrator in a way that would keep them guilt-free about the death of their relationship. In this death, it would let the narrator be able to lie and tell everyone that their wife was a good wife. But then that crippling self-destruction kicks in, and the narrator also realizes they want to die. Continuing on, our narrator says, "I hope I cut myself shaving tomorrow. I hope it bleeds all day long. Our friends say it's darkest before the sun rises. We're pretty sure they're all wrong. I hope it stays dark forever. I hope the worst isn't over, and I hope you blink before I do, and I hope I never get sober. And I hope when you think of me years down the line, you can't find one good thing to say. And I'd hope that if I found the strength to walk out, you'd stay the hell out of my way. I am drowning. There is no sight of land. You are coming down with me, hand in unlovable hand. And I hope you die. I hope we both die." With more to unpack, let's see where our narrator's drunken tirade has led us to now. The ever-present destruction is still there in full force in both the varieties of self and others. We continue to establish the drunken status of the couple, but we then get a particularly potent line with, "And I'd hope that if I found the strength to walk out, you'd stay the hell out of my way." They just want to leave, which directly contrasts with Southwood Plantation Road, where they say, "I am not going to lose you, we are going to stay married." And of course, shows how indecisive the narrator is. They keep bouncing between just wanting to leave their wife, just wanting their wife to die, to just wanting them both dead. But the key constant at the end of the song is, "You are coming down with me, hand in unlovable hand." The narrator has made their choice, and it's that the couple is going down together in a blaze of mutually assured destruction. I'd say that this is what marks the narrator making their decision after having bounced between leaving and death, but you won't see the result until a bit later, and spoilers, even then, the narrator is just as inconsistent and spiteful as ever. See America Right picks up directly after No Children. This song starts with our narrator getting arrested for drunk driving in Tampa, presumably after their drunken rant of the previous song. That said, it would be pretty fitting if the narrator was driving drunk while complaining about how much they want their wife to die. Regardless of how much time passes, the narrator eventually gets out of jail and they're heading off towards the bus in order to get back home to Tallahassee. They're so drunk that what should be a series of simple bus rides ends up with meeting their wife and having to hitchhike the rest of the way home while going through severe withdrawals. The narrator remarks that, "If we never make it back to California, I want you to know I love ya, but my love is like a dark cloud full of rain that's always right there up above ya," which can be interpreted as them wanting to go back to their native home of California, but I see it as something else. It's a desperate plea to return to their naive love from when they first met, before the pains of their crippling reality set in. But even then, when they say they love their wife, it still has their never-ending pain looming overhead. Upon returning home, we get the song Peacocks. The narrator is out on the porch looking at some wild peacocks alone. The album never makes it clear, but it's safe to assume that the couple had a fight either the night before or that morning. The narrator gazes at this surreal visual before going inside and engaging in some Funky Town shenanigans, before we carry on into the next song. International Small Arms Traffic Blues is all about establishing that the fights the couple have been having are becoming more and more like armed conflicts. It references many military conflicts like the Cold War and moving weapons across the border of Greece and Albania, all to establish that these conflicts between the couple are getting closer and closer to exploding. They're a powder keg ready to explode, and speaking of ready to explode, Have to Explode is our next track, and it's a continuation of International Small Arms Traffic Blues' themes. The couple is lying on the bathroom, sweating out endless amounts of alcohol in a blistering heat, and the narrator makes an astute observation observation that'll make you see exactly where this is heading. But before that, I want to mention the line that comes directly after that observation. I speak in smoke signals, and you answer in code. Their observation, though, is simple. The stage is set. Someone's gonna do something someone else will regret. And of course, something here will eventually have to explode. The tensions have been rising, but they're now nearing their maximum pressure level, and the end is nigh. I've noticed that the tracks at a certain point have started getting easier and easier to interpret and recap, which I chose to interpret as a deliberate creative choice to show just how quickly the couple is devolving and reaching their breaking point. The descent is rapid, but even still, the couple isn't about to give up yet. Old College Try is the narrator's last-ditch effort to reconcile with their wife. The narrator has a moment of clarity and says, "From the housetops to the gutters, from the ocean to the shore, the warning signs have all been bright and garish, far too great in number to ignore. From the cities to the swamplands, from the highways to the hills, our love has never had a leg to stand on. From the aspirins to the crosstops to the Ellavilles, but I will walk down to the end with you if you will come all the way down with me." The narrator has finally and truly come to terms that this relationship was doomed from the start, and the only way out is to see it through to the end. Which is all to say that the only way this relationship ends is death. And the narrator sees this, and rather than being upset, the only thing they can ask their wife to do is to follow them down to the end. And this is even more exemplified in the next set of lyrics. From the entrance to the exit is longer than it looks from where we stand. I want to say I'm sorry for stuff I haven't done yet. Things will shortly get completely out of hand. I can feel it in the rotten air tonight, in the tips of my fingers, in the skin on my face, in the weak last gasp of the evening's dying light, in the way those eyes I've always loved illuminate this place like a trash can fire in a prison cell, like the searchlights in the parking lots of hell. I will walk down to the end with you if you will come all the way down with me. The narrator realizes the end is here, as they can feel it in the rotten air tonight, in a probable reference to the Phil Collins song In the Air Tonight. That comparison is also warranted because despite the never-ending fights and the only release being death, the narrator still loves their wife. The narrator's hope that they both die is coming sooner than they'd expect, but instead of it coming out as like a malicious and spite-fueled rant, it comes out in a plea of quiet desperation. It's the last-ditch effort for them to handle things civilly. But we all know how this turns out. Oceanographer's choice is the moment it all comes tumbling down. The narrator then realizes that they can't end this civilly, and the pressure has made them both crack. It opens with the lines, well, guy in a skeleton costume comes up to the guy in a Superman suit, runs through him with a broadsword. And as the narrator turns off the TV, they stand up and realize that they're trying to speak to their wife won't get them anywhere. The wife comes into the room, they make eye contact, and she kicks the ashtray over. The narrator snuffs the cigarette out, only to light another one. Even in their final moments, their addictions still hold precedence over everything. The narrator begins to mention how they're throwing off sparks while still having their signature regret thrown into the mix. They continue to trash everything in this derelict house, and those sparks end up being real because the house is starting to go up in flames. But neither one of them cares. This is where they die, and the house that was meant to fix their relationship is where their tomb is. Neither of them are aware that they're going to die, and you could argue that they don't actually die in the end, but I think it's more fitting that they do. And as the house burns down, we get one last song, an outro that I like to think is the dying thoughts of the narrator as they finally got what they deserve, as they allude to in the final lyrics of this track. Alpha Rat's Nest is the grand finale. The house is burning to the ground, and the most interesting thing is the closing verses of the album that truly imply that the couple is dying in this house fire, and there isn't anything to save them. Oh, sing, 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 for the dying of the day. Sing for the flames that will rip through here, and the smoke that will carry us away. Yeah, sing for the damage we've done, and the worst things that we'll do. Open your mouth open, sing for me now, and I will sing for you. The clearest reasoning for this being their last moments, outside of it being a good poetic end, is the reference to the smoke that carries them away. It's a repeat from No Children, and the junkyard in that song was the house. It was all really beautiful foreshadowing, and the rest of this has been foreshadowed from the start, that the damages that they've done to each other, mentally and physically, are impossible to overcome, and thus, the couple dies. It's an incredibly morbid end, to be sure, but it's such a poetic one that their mutually assured destruction ultimately culminates in their deaths. And that, dear reader, is the end of the couple's story. I don't think I stopped enough along the way to talk about just how beautiful the lyrics of this album can be at times, and me repeating these lyrics in my shitty non-singing version of it really just doesn't do the sheer emotional delivery of those lyrics justice on the album. The music itself is fantastic, and the variety in pace and tone really helps sell how much time passes throughout it, and just how chaotic and messy the story itself is. I've listened to a fair bit of other Mountain Goat songs, particularly Transcendental Youth. Good album. I'm not likely to end up covering it in any capacity, at least in any time soon, but that's besides the point. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention how I stumbled across this album in the first place. The thing that introduced me to this album was the fact that the songs No Children and Old College Try were used in the third season of Moral Oral, and I actually did cover that series. Haha! I wrote this before I finished watching that show, but I did cover it. And it was the Christmas special last year that everyone seemed to like, and I'm glad that video did well because I did not have high hopes for it. Anyway, besides the point, sorry to editorialize. I'd also like to take the time to mention that if you haven't seen that video, please go watch it. And if you've ever seen the show BoJack Horseman, that show only exists because Moral Oral paved the way for darker, more mature shows and adult animation to exist. But as great as its impact was, Oral was canceled after 3 seasons. But those 3 seasons we got were something beyond special. Check it out. All in all, I can't recommend this album enough. It's such a beautiful and dark album that tells such a compelling story, and I'd honestly say that knowing the story going in helps make a lot more sense. I didn't go in blind, full disclosure, after I already told the story. I watched a video that quickly introduced and recapped the full story of the couple from start to finish, and so I focused in on the end, because that was the most interesting part to me. So go listen to the damn thing, you won't regret it. Oh, yeah, I forgot I'm supposed to give ratings to these things, and I'm feeling a nice solid 7.5 out of 10 because it just feels right to me. Anyways, my name is A Leg of Glazed Ham, and thank you for listening to me tell you a very tragic tale. It means a lot. Thanks again, and good night.